Make sure y'all stay on point with the puncher's point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the puncher's point. Now, unfortunately for me yesterday, I was just doing the whole doom scrolling on Instagram, and then I had to come across this garbage. Gervonta Davis, Jake Paul, November 14th, State Farm Arena in an exhibition match. Now, I remember when Jake Paul called out Anthony Joshua. I remember when he called out Gervonta Davis after his win against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. However, I did not think this fight was actually going to materialize into something. I didn't think Gervonta Davis was going to actually take some type of fight like this. I never would have thought that I would have seen Gervonta Davis versus Jake Paul being official, but here we are. Now, overall, before I continue, I do want to say the source for this article was Andreas Hale from ESPN. The two sides, most valuable promotions, of Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis and his team, they both confirmed that this fight is going to happen, unfortunately. But overall, what I really wanted to talk about in this episode was why is this fight happening? What are the potential reasons why Gervonta Davis would even take such a crazy fight? And I'm gonna go through all those reasons as of right now. So the first reason I have is that some people might claim Gervonta Davis might need some money. If y'all don't know, if y'all haven't been caught up with what happened with Gervonta Davis, he got into some trouble with his baby mama or his ex-girlfriend. There was a little dispute over the son. There was some domestic violence allegation. He went to jail. He got arrested. He got bailed out. And overall, as far as what I've heard recently, it looks like they're about to drop those charges. I'm not sure what's going on with that case yet, but when that all was announced, he was supposed to fight Lamont Roach. He was supposed to have that rematch with Lamont Roach. And then all of a sudden, this all came down, and now we don't get that rematch with Lamont Roach. So maybe some people claim that he might be in need of money, which is why he's going to take a big cash grab like this. I don't think that's the reason, to be honest with you. The other reason why people might think that Gervonta Davis would take such a stupid fight is because they're saying he's ducking the division. And in my opinion, I don't want to call Gervonta Davis a duck, but that might be what's going on right here. That is quite possibly a reason why he might take this fight is because he realizes that Lamont Roach really is a challenge and he doesn't want to give him that rematch. Now, the whole argument to that is, well, he agreed to it in the first place, so it had to happen. Now, some people might say, well, when he found out, when all this stuff came and all this whole whirlwind of legal disputes, when all of this came into place, that was kind of a way for him to cop out. To me, I feel like the reason why he took this fight was because he knows eight is more money with Jake Paul. I don't think it's about the money, but I do believe that if there's anything that we know about Gervonta Davis is that he's been chasing money his entire career. It hasn't been about the belts for Gervonta Davis. He's three division champion. I understand that. However, recently, if you go and you look at his fights, he's been challenging guys who were weight trained. He's been challenging guys who had to step up in a weight class, who were in a weight class below. And it doesn't seem like he's been fighting any real true lightweights, any true 135 pounders, which is the belt that he's holding. So for me, when you really go and you really examine the whole situation, Gervonta Davis, his entire career, it's always been about money, in my opinion. I think that was what Floyd taught him, and I think that's what he kind of kept throughout his career. I'm gonna give y'all the real reason why I believe Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis is happening. The real reason why I believe that fight is happening is because Gervonta Davis does not love the sport of boxing no more. To me, that is the conclusion I came to. He does not love the sport of boxing anymore. And I do believe that he does want to make as much money as possible. He does want to be away from the sport. And I do believe that this is the last time we might see Gervonta Davis in a ring. Maybe he does some more exhibitions in the future. And overall, if he's retired, and he wants to do those exhibitions, I mean, again, if we can't crap on Floyd for doing them, if we can't crap on Manny for doing them, we shouldn't crap on Gervonta Davis for doing them either. If he wants to go and do these exhibitions, by all means, feel free. But here's the little caveat on top. You need to stay retired. If you're going to do these stupid exhibitions, if you're going to go and you're going to fight somebody like Jake Paul, you need to stay retired. because clearly you don't take the sport seriously. You're talking about how you won't fight this guy because he's too big, because you can't make that weight, but yet you're going to fight Jake Paul, who's 70 pounds heavier than you. And I understand Jake Paul is not on the level of a lot of these boxers in this lightweight division. You know, Jake Paul does not have the skills of a Shakur Stevenson. He doesn't have the skills of a lot of these 135 pounders. And that's a fact. So I understand why he's taking this fight because he realizes that Jake Paul doesn't have nearly the same amount of skills as all these guys. Yet he wants to take this fight, and he feels like it's a little bit less of a risk than if he were to go and fight somebody like a Shakur Stevenson, and that ends up on his record. So overall, in my opinion, I do believe that Gervonta Tank Davis is taking this fight because A, it's less risk, it makes a lot of money, and three, because he's done with the sport of boxing. But I think the biggest reason is because I think he's done with the sport of boxing. Y'all heard him. Y'all heard him many times. He doesn't love this sport no more. He's been talking about it for the last year. He wants to get out of this sport, and one of the reasons because he said he wanted to be there for his kids. And he has so many reasons. He says at this point, like he just doesn't love the sport no more, you know? And the problem with Gervonta Tank Davis is you could have took this last year and it could have been one of the best farewell years in boxing history. You could have gone and fight some of these guys like Shakur Stevenson. You could have fought somebody like a Devin Haney. You could have fought somebody like a Ryan Garcia, give him that rematch again. There were a lot of guys that you could have fought and you chose not to, you know, and the whole Lamont Roach fight happened. And in my opinion, to this day, I still believe that the Lamont Roach fight, I still believe that Barry Hunter bringing him in and bringing in Calvin Ford, they probably had two different ideologies. And it seemed like Gervonta Tank Davis was getting flustered in that corner. It's like he had two different guys telling him what to do and he didn't know who to focus on. What I also find funny is if y'all remember, before the Lamont Roach fight, this was his longest span of time without having a fight before that Lamont Roach fight. So I wonder if he got a little too comfortable with the time off that he had. I wonder if he got a little bit too comfortable with that. Before that, if y'all remember, he also faced some jail time. He got out in 30 days. He went right back to the gym. I thought Gervonta Tank Davis was going to be back and on a roll, but clearly I was wrong. And I think when we go and we evaluate everything that's going on, I feel like the amount of time before that Lamont Roach fight, I feel like that time span where he didn't have a fight, it was the longest time span that he had before. Because if y'all remember, Gervonta Davis was fighting basically 3 or 4 times a year. He was on that Canelo schedule where he would just constantly fight and fight and fight. You know, and y'all can say what you want about Gervonta Tank Davis throughout his entire career, but the one thing you can't say about him was he was not active. That guy was fighting 3 or 4 times a year. And somewhere along the line with all this stuff happening before the Lamont Roach fight, he had all this time off. And when he got back into the ring, I don't know if it was ring rust. I don't know if it was the dispute between the trainers. I don't know what it was with Gervonta Tank Davis, but he didn't look as sharp against Lamont Roach. In my opinion, that fight against Lamont Roach was not Gervonta Davis's best fight. And I felt like if you gave Lamont Roach the rematch, we were going to see a different Tank Davis. But we don't see that rematch. We're not seeing it because Gervonta Tank Davis has chosen to fight Jake Paul. And it's funny, as far as Jake Paul's side, this is an exact year that the Mike Tyson fight happened. So November 14th of 2024, November 14th of 2025, these fights have both taken place within an exact year of each other, which I find pretty funny. But here's the thing with Jake Paul. Now, I already spoke about what I think of Gervonta Tank Davis, why he took this fight. Why did Jake Paul take this fight? Well, to me, I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like he wanted to fight Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua just wasn't interested. I feel like he wanted to fight Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua was like, screw that. So for me, I feel like the best fight that he could get that could generate some money was Gervonta Tank Davis. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not. I don't think this helps Jake Paul in any manner whatsoever. I think the Chavez Jr. fight was more beneficial to Jake Paul than what's going on here. You can't just go in there, fight Gervonta Tank Davis in an exhibition match, remind you, and then just be like, I'm ready for a world title shot. The problem with it is here you are talking about how you want to be a world champion. This has always been my problem with Jake Paul. I have no problem with him going and fighting somebody like a Gilberto Ramirez. I have no problem with him going and trying to fight somebody like a Badu Jack. I had no problem with him fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I thought that was a decent step to becoming a world champion, at least in the cruiserweight division. But then all of a sudden, somewhere down the line, You called out Zerto. You shook Zerto's hand. I remember he had a face-off with Usyk. He shook Usyk's hand. You talked about calling out Anthony Joshua. I don't know where Gervonta Tank Davis got into this at all, but somewhere down the line, again, Jake Paul chose money over possibly being a world champion. Look, if he wants to be a world champion, then I have no problem with that whatsoever. But this is not the route to go in. And everybody knows that. But what a lot of people are forgetting is that a lot of people don't like the fact that Jake Paul is in the sport of boxing in itself. And we all heard him say he's going to sue the next person who says that his fights are rigged or fixed or they're scams. And again, I'm just saying that in itself sounds sus. I'm not saying Jake Paul's fights are rigged. I'm not saying they're not. Again, I cannot confirm nor deny whether those fights are rigged. But here's what I will say. If we're looking at Jake Paul, if he wants to become a world champion and these fights are legit, I have no problem with him going and fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., even though he was past his prime. I have no problem with him trying to find fights with Zurdo Ramirez and Badu Jack. Zurdo Ramirez would have been the perfect fight. You know, he would have been the perfect fight. Oscar De La Hoya said he would have loved to make business with him. It looked like a fight that could have happened. They had the face off. It seemed like both of them were interested. I would have been totally fine with that fight. Jake Paul goes in there. He has that fight with Zurdo Ramirez. Maybe he wins, maybe becomes champion. Who knows? But overall, for some reason, that fight just did not happen. There were no talks about that fight. And here we are, and here he is fighting Gervonta Tank Davis. I think the way Jake Paul is playing boxing, I think it's kind of disgraceful. And what I mean by that is you talk about being a world champion, but you're not taking the steps to becoming a world champion. It seems like every single time he says that, there's a little roadblock right there, and there's something that distracts him. And Gervonta Tank Davis, we all know about Tank. He's one of the biggest cash cows in boxing right now. Behind Canelo Alvarez, I would say Tank Davis generates the most money out of any boxer besides Canelo Alvarez and maybe Jake Paul himself. He takes this fight with Gervonta Davis. This is going to sell absolutely. You're going to get all of the social media, all of the YouTubers, all of the influencers are going to get on this. It's on Netflix, so there's that right there. A lot of people are going to tune in for free and watch this fight. My only problem is I don't like this fight. It's not a fight that's going to help Jake Paul in any way possible, and it's a fight that could potentially ruin Gervonta Tank Davis's legacy. But here's my thing. Jake Paul's going to go in there. He's going to have this exhibition with Gervonta Tank Davis. And who knows what's going to happen. Honestly, I don't even know if I want to watch this fight. I might watch it just to see what happens. They're lucky I got Netflix or I wouldn't watch it to begin with. But regardless, I feel like if we're talking about this fight, I think if Tank is going to take this fight, he has to officially retire. I feel like if he doesn't officially retire, it just ruins his legacy. Now, hypothetically, he goes and he does this exhibition with Jake Paul and he decides that he wants to continue fighting in the sport of boxing, then he needs to take that path. He needs to take that path and start fighting some of these elite guys. Because at this point, Tank has had way too many fights where he knows he can win them. Frank Martin, nobody expected Frank Martin to win that fight. Frank Martin is a good fighter, but nobody expected him to win that fight. Then you go to the fights that he had with Ryan Garcia, where Ryan Garcia was weight drained. You go to the fights that he had with Lamont Roach. He didn't expect Lamont Roach to bring the heat that he did. So overall, a lot of these fights that Gervonta Tank Davis had, he always felt like he could win them. You know, there was the Pitbull Cruz fight, which in my opinion was the one fight that I believe was an actual challenge for Gervonta Tank Davis. And a lot of people say it. There's a lot of people who believe Gervonta Tank Davis is the best 135 pounder. A lot of people believe that if he goes up against these big names, he beats them all. And I can't argue that. But the problem is, we don't see him going up against those big names. Again, we don't see him trying to do anything in this 135-pound division. All he's doing was holding it up. And so for me, I feel like the problem with Tank Davis is he kept that belt. He wasn't into the sport of boxing. And then when he had that fight with Lamont Roach, I believe that he felt like maybe it was time for him to hang the gloves up. So before he hangs them up, he's going to take this one money grab fight with Jake Paul. And again, if he takes it, that's one thing, but he needs to retire. At that point, you have to retire after that. If you want to keep doing exhibition fights after that, by all means, feel free. But you have to retire after that. If you make a run, then you have to fight the best because we've been going through this way too long. And I don't want to see him make a run after this. I'm going to be honest with you. And the reason why I don't want to see him make a run is because I feel like with all of this stuff that just happened, with all of this BS and all the crap that he got himself into, I do believe that after this, he's not going to be the same fighter. I believe that if he took that fight against Lamont Roach, if he kept Calvin Ford as his main trainer, if he did that, I believe that he would have went into this fight and he would have looked even better than what he did the first fight, and I believe he would have knocked out Lamont Roach. That would have been my prediction. But we're not getting that fight, so I can't say for sure what would happen. However, the problem is, I do believe after this, if Gervonta Davis wanted to make a run, then A, he's completely contradicting himself and him saying he wants to get out of the sport of boxing. So that's number one. And number two, I don't believe he'll be the same fighter. You can't go from fighting somebody like Jake Paul, who doesn't have the necessary skills to be an elite fighter. You can't go from fighting him to fighting a guy like Shakur Stevenson. It's not going to work. Or fighting a guy like Devin Haney. It's not going to work. Fighting somebody like Atia Fimo. It's not going to work. That's my problem. If you're going to do this fight with Jake Paul, just take the money and retire. Live your life. Keep your keep your nose clean. Keep your head on a swivel. Stop getting into trouble. Take the money that you already earned throughout your career and live your life. That's what I would like to see from Gervonta Tank Davis. But obviously, I'm not his manager. I'm not his promoter. I'm not anybody that's a part of his team. So I really don't have the power. I don't have the right to even make those choices. That's up to him, his team, his family, all those types of things. So I really can't say what's next for Gervonta Tank Davis after this fight. But do I like this fight? Absolutely not. I don't like this fight. If this is just one last little hurrah to get a paycheck and leave for Gervonta Tank Davis, fine. It was nice seeing you in the sport of boxing. You know, he was one of the most exciting fighters in this sport, in this era. But all things come to an end. As far as Jake Paul, this is a shame on you because this does not get you anywhere closer to a title fight. But I think the reason why he takes these fights is because it makes him a bigger name. It basically solidifies him as a cash cow, and then a lot of guys start lining up to get that cash grab. And maybe this is just a way for him to get that fight with Anthony Joshua, but overall, this isn't going to make you a world champion. I wouldn't have cared if he took that fight with Anthony Joshua. Does it hurt Anthony Joshua? Yes, but I wouldn't have cared. I don't think Anthony Joshua wanted that fight because I don't think Anthony Joshua cares enough about Jake Paul. I don't think he cares enough, so I don't think they can make the fight happen. But Jake Paul has to pick a path. He has to figure out what he wants to do. Do you want to be a world champion? Do you want to be a world champion? Because if so, you're gonna have to go up against some guys that are ranked in the top five that don't have that Gervonta Tank Davis name. You're gonna have to go up against some guys like Badu Jack and Zerto Ramirez and Jairo Pataya in that cruiserweight division. Do you want to go up to heavyweight? Because if so, you're gonna have to go through that heavyweight gauntlet of guys like Daniel Dubois, Joseph Parker, Caballel. You got Mosa Tama in there. You're gonna have to go through guys like Usyk to become a heavyweight champion. So what path do you want to take? That's the question right there. He doesn't even know what path he wants to take. I just feel like a lot of the times it's disgracing boxing because he's doing these things that don't make any sense. I didn't mind this Chavez Jr. fight. I didn't mind it at all. That was a great fight for him. That was a good fight that could be a stepping stone into the right direction. It was. You seen him. He got attention from Zerto Ramirez. Zerto Ramirez was on the co-main event. I knew right when Zerto Ramirez was on the co-main event, that would have been the perfect time for Jake Paul to snag a title opportunity. It would have been a perfect time for him to actually do what he said he was going to do. But nah, we got to go and fight Gervonta Davis. It doesn't make no sense. And that's why it's a disgrace to boxing is because what Jake Paul is doing, he's not following what he said, and at the same time, all these fans who are not a fan of boxing, they're gonna come in and watch this clown show. When in reality, you got bigger fights that need to happen and bigger fights that are going to happen, fights that deserve more attention. Guys like Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford, guys like Devin Haney and Brian Norman, guys like Inoue versus MJ Akhmadaliev. These are fights that should be happening, but these are fights that should generate a lot of attention, but they're not because it's all getting overshadowed by Jake Paul and his shenanigans. With that being said, I hope that after this fight, Tank rides into the sunset. And so, with that being said, again, I don't know if I'm gonna make a prediction episode because it's an exhibition. I don't know what I'm predicting, but overall, maybe I'll make a follow-up episode when it gets closer to November 14th. But regardless, if y'all are interested in that fight, Jake Paul, Gervonta Tank Davis on Netflix, November 14th, State Farm Arena. So make sure y'all, if you guys love that fight, make sure y'all go check it out. But with that being said, I know I've been gone for a long time. I do apologize for that. The boxing world has been kind of slow. But you know what? We're gonna try to be a lot more active on this podcast. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna keep on giving you guys a lot more interactive content. I recently posted something about some fighters in cars and which car ride you would rather be in if you were gonna go on a cross-country road trip. So definitely check out the Instagram, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Threads, the Reddit, the Discord. Make sure y'all check out all of our social medias. Make sure y'all go check out the last podcast that I did with the Reddit review. Again, with boxing being this slow, another Reddit review might come along the way. We got Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford approaching. We have Naoya Inoue versus MJ Akhmadaliev approaching the day after. So I do believe September is going to be a busy, busy month for the Puncher's Point, for the sport of boxing in general. And I can't wait to get back into the grind of things. So with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune into the podcast, the YouTube. Make sure y'all follow, subscribe, like, comment, share, do all of those things. And last but not least, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.